tātou nei, kaupapa, whakahira wātu. Tino tātai ki nungi tētai o ngā karikia. Kia whakawātia e tēnei o ngā wāhanga. Mata, no reira, te tēnei. Mo ye, te tupua, mo ye, te tawhito, mo ye, te kāwhi o ngā ariki. Mo ye, tā whiwhia tuki ngā tua. Tai akera, me te kawatua tai, ki te kawatua rau, i te kawatua toru, ki te kawatua whā, ki te kawatua rima. Te kawatua no, te kawatua whituku, te kawatua waru, te kawatua iwa, te kawatua ngāhuru. Te kawa kia i o matua nui. E i o nui, e i o ora, e i o take, e i o pūkenga, i o te pūtanga o ngātua. Hia taka te kāwi o te rei, kia pāu te pūtanga o enei tau wira. Hoi nei tāra, hia puti ki te whaia, ki te ao marama. Whāno, haramai te toki. Haumie, uie! Haumie! O reira, tēnā tā. Tō tahira, mihi atu ki tā tātou nei. Kai ahanga tā tātou nei atua. Aha kua no whiaha kua wai. Wōna mana ki tanga e tau i o maikiri a mātau i tēnei wai, tēnei hao. Kia poi ai ia mātau i ngā wākato no reira. Krōri ki tōne mata. Uri kau atu ara ngā whakāru ki runga mamate. Huhua o te motu nei o tira ngā mate. Huhua o te ao. E ngā mate haere atura. Haere atura i e koutai ki roto i ngā Hawaii ki tanga. Hawaii ki nui, Hawaii ki roa. Hawaii ki pā mā te Hawaii ki tanga o tātou tira tangata. No reire ngā mate haere. Rātou ki rātou, tātou ki a tātou. Me hoki au, ngā whakaara nui ki rungi te kingi Māori, tūhei te poto tau te whero te tuawhitu. Ka wiari ki no hanara ki rungi tōra te rauna tapu, ona mātua na tūpuna, dire hou, pai Māori. Hoki a mai ngā whakaara nui, tuatangi ake ki runga. I te whānau rā no ana ki rungi te roa ngā puke o rāke no reira, kia koutou. O e tai o ngā mana whenua o tēnei o ngā takiwā, kia koutou o ngā te whātua rāke. Tēnā kouta. Tēnā kouta o mahi. E mana ki tia ki ngā tangata. Aha kua wai, aha kua nōwhia. Mana ki ai e kouta i ngā tangata. Ko tai mai ki roto. Te pokapua o tāma ki norere tēnā kouta. Uri kau atu ana ngā whakaara nui. Ki ngā iwi, ki ngā hapu. E pupuri tonu nei te mana o ngā momo wāhi o tāma ki. Here ngā waka tāma ki, here ngā tangata. Nō reira, tēnā kouta. O ki mai ngā whakaara nui, ki rungi te kaupapa o te pōnu. Nō reira, ka tika te mihi atu, ki ngā hoia. Nō reira, kia koe, matua Tigilau, tēnā koe i o mahi, ko mahi ia e koe, kia tūwai pēro o ngā opetaua, o ngā Polynesian Panthers, nō reira, nei rā, e mātou mikina kia koe. Uri ko atu ana ngā whakaara, ki rungi a koe te mārei kura, kia koe e te whae e moana. Tō whawhai ni ai e koe, e pāna. Ki te reo Māori, i runga i ngā momo, leo iri rangi no reira, anō ki te mihi atu kia. Uri kau atu ana ngā whakaaro, ki rungi ngā hoia, e whawhai tonu nei te reo te whawhai. Mō wai, mō ngā tangata whenua tuatahi, o Aotearoa nei, o tira kia koutou, e ngā hoia o te ao, ko tae mai i tēnei pō, mo te aha, te whawhai, e pāna. Ki ngā he, ki ngā mahi, ko mahi nia e ai rātou, i runga i te ronga wāhi, o Gaza i runga i te ronga wāhi. Nō reira, nei rā mātou, o Aotearoa nei e mihi ana kia koutou, whānu Aotearoa nei o tira, kia koutou ngā tangata tiriti, o uru mai ki roto i tēnei o ngā kaupapa. Mai o mātou, whānu nei te rōpū, te pāti Māori, e mihi ana kia koutou, uri kau atu ngā whakaaro ki ringi a koe, e te tuahine, kia koe Chlöe. I rungi te mōhio, kāre au ki te atu i tētahi atu pāti i kone atu i a mātou te pāti Māori o tira ki a koe, te pāti kakāriki, nō reira. Ngā mingi ki rungi a koe, o tira ki tā mātou ne whae mārama, e pikau nei i ronga mai ki rungi a koe. Nō reira, huri, tēnā koutou, tēnā koe te katoa. E koroi ia, maumaro ki te whenua, whaka rātou, ko whiturangitia, haere atura, ako o te whenua ki te whenua tātou, ki a tātou, tēnā koutou. In short, good evening, good afternoon to everybody. Give yourselves a round of applause. I suppose not to prolong the start, I suppose I better translate what I said into Māori into English. Hey. Anyway, can I first acknowledge our Creator, whoever that may be, and everything that that Creator does for us every day on the daily. So I just want to make sure to acknowledge our Creator. Also wanted to make a special acknowledgement to our loved ones who have passed away. Our loved ones here that are sitting within us. Also, all the whānau who have passed away over in Gaza at this time. Just wanted to acknowledge all of them that have passed away. Wanted to also make a special mention to our Māori King Te Heiti Pōta Tau Te Whero Te Tōwhitu, and his royal house that sits in Taili, within Tiny Rock. Also wanted to make a special acknowledgement to Ngāi Te Whātua Rākei and all the different mana whenua iwi groups that look after Auckland far and wide. As far north as however far you want to claim Auckland, and as far south as how far south we want to claim Auckland as to the far western and eastern shores of Auckland. Just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge them all. Also wanted to acknowledge all of our soldiers, the soldiers that have paved the way for us so that we're able to live a better life than what may have been if they didn't do anything. So special mention to Matua Tigilau and the Polynesian Panthers. Also want to get a big round of applause for our moana. Without these soldiers that were literally on the front lines for our people, Māori, Pacific, everybody in between, then I suppose we wouldn't have what we currently have today. And because of the kaupapa that we're here for tonight, it's awesome to see such a huge turnout, and no doubt the performances and the sharings that's going to be happening tonight is going to inspire us all to be that little bit more stronger in our voice when we're speaking up for the voices of the people that have no voice. Nō reira, e rungi tēnā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Kia ora koutou, ko Nicholas Rupakawinwa. This is just, I'm the Health and Safety Manager for the event. Just a brief message that in the event of an evacuation, please exit through the rear doors and turn to the right, go out then up onto Grafton Street, which is where the assembly area is. Thank you very much for your time.
Before the war, I used to feel that Gaza was my second mother. Its ground was the warm chest I could lay on, the sky was my dreams. Without limits, the sea would wash away my worries. But today, I feel like it's an exile. I stopped feeling it's the city of my dreams. In the war, the main electricity pole was hit by a huge rocket. All my uncles were at home with us and the electricity went out. But there was another line working near to the house. I went to our neighbour and asked him for an extension so we could connect to the second line. Once we were connected and our house was lit, he came to take the extension back. We had a huge fight. In war, everyone thinks about themselves. During the war, a lot of people had 20 bags of flour and never had a shortage of gas, while others didn't have a piece of bread. They were asking their neighbours for bread, and they wouldn't give them any. Most people locked up their things under lock and key and decided not to give anything to anyone. But others were good and helpful. Back to our topic. We didn't agree to return the connection to him, even though it was his extension that we were using. And for the first time, I realised how bad we can be. We were punished on the spot. The house next to us was bombed and split in 2 pieces, and half of it fell on us. We left the connection and electricity and everything, and ran away to my uncle's house near to the municipal park. My uncle's house is close to a government building, and in the evening, people started saying that building would be bombed. And if it was bombed, my uncle's house might disappear from existence. We sat there not knowing what to do or where to go. My dad kept reassuring us. Don't worry, don't be scared, nothing will happen. Don't worry, don't be scared, nothing will happen. We stayed like that till midnight. We kept hearing rockets and explosions, and my dad kept saying, don't worry, and don't be scared. But suddenly he said, follow me, we're going back home. And he started shaking. All of us started shaking with him. My mum started screaming, and my uncle was in really bad shape. Anyway, all of us ran away in the middle of the night with my uncle's family. We ran home. Couldn't believe it when we got home. Till today, I don't remember where we slept or how. The important thing was that we were away from that building. We found that our neighbour had taken the electricity connection, and we spent the night in darkness while his house was lit. I felt he was right to take his connection back. After that, my dad got a connection complex. He bought 3 electric cables and 6 gas bottles, 2 electric pans, 20 neon lights, 20 packs of candles, 6 packs of cans, 10 packs of wires, 6 flashlights, and 2 boxes of batteries. We're living in war, and we have to be careful till things get better. I got a complex worse than all others. It's as though I was generous before the war, or maybe I didn't know the value of things. Because I couldn't believe that there would be a day when I wouldn't find a drink of water or a piece of bread. But after the war, I became super careful with everything and anything. I started barely sweetening my tea, and if I broke a loaf of bread, I wasn't allowed to finish it. I lost my appetite for food, and I became really economical. My dad says, Ahmed always has his pocket money. Of course, because I take it and save it in case there's another war. I feel like I'm married with 10 kids. I'm scared of life, of everything, of the smallest things, always worried. I feel that all of Gaza is sitting on moving sands. Any madness you can imagine can happen in a second in this place. And a lot of dreams may come true too. It's a strange city with no logic. China is now a third of the world, and they all work but can barely make enough shoes and shirts for Gaza. Gaza consumes everything, and the world attacks it, but it keeps pretending nothing is wrong. Actually, Gaza is full of poverty, and there are people who pick their food from the garbage. The tragedy is that things keep getting worse, and the biggest tragedy is that there's nothing to stop that happening. Every pit has a bottom, except Gaza. I dream of living one day in freedom, and I don't think that's a big dream, but it's hard to come true. My dream is also to end the Palestinian division, which is giving us schizophrenia. I'm tired of thinking, but I can't stop it. But we have to plead, and God will provide. And to you folks, goodbye.
All my life, I thought Gaza was the biggest and most beautiful city in the world. But once, I went with my dad to Jaffa, and I came back with my head spinning. After that, I felt that Gaza was the size of a needle hole and wasn't beautiful, and it keeps getting smaller and worse. No one can breathe, and on top of it, we're not allowed to travel. Every time I walk the streets of Gaza, I suffocate. Jaffa's picture won't leave my mind. I ask myself, where are we? We're so far from the rest of the world. That's why I'm always at the sea, because I feel it's not from Gaza. I keep writing my name in the sand, and the waves come and erase it. Before the war, I had wanted to be an electronics engineer, but since the war, I hate going to school. I feel I won't be anything important in my life, and even if I will, so what? It's all the same in the city. Am I going to be the prettiest flower on a garbage heap? When the bombing began, all the schools in Gaza went home, except us. The principal wouldn't let us leave. The kids freaked out, and in a second, they went out into the schoolyard. The weird thing is that in the Zaytuna school, the one near the ministry passports, is what got hit first. With the first hit, a piece of a rocket flew into the biggest tree in the school and sliced it in two like a sugar cane. As soon as we saw that, no one stayed at school. Students, teachers, or the principal. We fled for our lives. I thought the only martyr there that I would see in the war was the tree. But as soon as I got home, there were 4 more martyrs in our street, as though waiting for me to say goodbye to them. When I was done with that, 3 more martyrs from the same family in our street arrived. As soon as we buried them and we returned, our neighbor's house, 2 houses down the street, was bombed by the army, and the house was wiped off the ground. Everyone died. I felt most sad for the little girls. I felt the world war was targeting me alone, of all the people in Gaza. All day, I've been seeing martyrs. In the Shifa hospital, I saw a sight that I will never forget. Hundreds of corpses, one on top of the other. Their flesh, their blood, and their bones all melting on each other. You wouldn't know the woman from the man, or even the child. Piles of flesh on the beds, and lots of people screaming and crying, not knowing where their kids are, their men, or their women. That night, I came home from hospital and was awake until morning from fear. I thought that it would only be that night that I couldn't sleep, but until today, I see them in front of me, and I can't sleep.
Ashraf Associate. All the neighborhood kids loved him. He was calmer than the breeze. He would take his pocket money from my father and give it to me. Everyone loved him. His friends came and he went with them to school. They went out running like butterflies flying off the ground. like the world was created for them. The Israeli planes were in the air. The sound of a helicopter was like a monster waiting to pounce on its prey. A car of wanted men were driving along Yamuk Street, and the butterflies were near the car. The butterflies didn't know that this car would be the fire that would make them burn. A rocket fell in the car. My brother Tali flew 5 meters off the ground. He flew higher than the car and then came down walking. Nothing was the matter with him. The ambulance came and took the corpses. People told him to get into the ambulance, but he told them, nothing is the matter with me, and he kept going to school. 100 meters later, he put his hand on his heart and he fell down a martyr. And I was in the street waiting for the bus, and my sister told me to go and see what was wrong. I did, but I didn't see Tariq, and I went to school. While I was in class, my uncles came and told me you would take 3 days off school. I didn't suspect anything. We got in the car. My uncle told the driver to turn off the news, and then I started getting suspicious because my uncle loves the news. We got home and there was a big crowd of people around. Before I went down, I saw my father sitting on the chair crying. It was the first time I saw my father crying. And he was holding a picture of my brother Tariq, and I asked him, Dad, was my brother martyred? And he said, God have mercy on his soul. The ambulance brought him from the hospital. We all ran to him to say goodbye. He was sleeping like an angel with the book he'd been carrying still in his hands. My father refused to let us go with him to the cemetery, but I got in the car and went and said goodbye to him and read the fatwa prayer on his grave. I kept going for 3 months every day to sit at his grave and talk to him. At night, I stare at his picture in the room with the hero martyr Tariq written on it. Since my brother was martyred, I got used to sleeping in the bed alone. We used to sleep one on top of the other, legs on top of heads, and sometimes it felt like all of our limbs were jumbled together. But today I have the bed to myself. I'll never forget my brother.
I feel like running in the streets till my headscarf flies in the sky and I fly after it. Sometimes I feel like being totally crazy, but I can't. It's the first time I say things like this. Maybe they're not the kind of things I say, or maybe they're the things that I can't express or I'm scared to express. Why do my parents treat me like this? I look at the girls my age, how they're living their lives, and I envy them. I wish I could be like them in their confidence and freedom. I wish a ship would carry me to a distant island and throw me on its shore, far away from the world, from everything, especially the war. Speaking of the war, all the war was one pile and Mum was the other. I'll never understand why my mum kept describing things to me that I'd already seen. She and I were standing on the balcony. They bombed our neighbor's house, and one of the neighbors died. We saw how the house was destroyed, and how the corpse flew onto the street. And you can imagine what happened to the family after that. Did it end? No, it didn't. Mom started telling me about how our neighbor's house was bombed and how our neighbor flew from the house like she was talking to someone who hadn't been standing with her. And on it went. Stories from Mom all through the war, and I was the only listener. We'd be sitting watching TV, and they would say there was bombing or destruction in some place. The report would be 15 minutes long, but Mom's repeated report would be 2 hours. She would talk about the report like I hadn't been with her. I started to doubt myself. Had I been sitting with her? Or not? I swear I was there. I was really there. I was sitting
is a plane carrying people and travelling towards the unknown, landing neither in heaven nor in hell. No one knows when it will land, and people may stay suspended like that for twice my lifetime. All days here are the same. Nothing is new. The simplest thing is that dreams and wishes are hard to make true in a Gaza, especially if they're like mine, to be an artist, singing and acting and playing music. In Gaza, the only music we hear is that of death and dancing on wounds. If I go abroad and study directing, how would society look at me? After I graduate, would the country be like now or worse? Everything is foggy and unclear to me, like people's faces on Friday at the Feras market, and like the day the war began. The first hit was at the Ministry of Passports. My friend and I came out of an exam. It was the first day of the first term exams. We sat outside the front school gate, talking and waiting for the rest of our friends so we'd go home together. Suddenly there was a series of explosions. I was in shock and I felt like I was going to die. We ran away and I was really scared. We saw the women running and screaming and beating their faces and I had no idea what was going on. I felt I couldn't stand on my legs and the world started spinning. I fainted and I stopped feeling anything at all. Then I woke up to my friend's voice shouting, "Army, for God's sake, wake up." After I woke up, I started crying, not knowing where to go or what to do. An older girl helped me and took me home. As soon as I arrived, my mother took me in her arms. I was very tired, but at that moment I rested. I needed to fall into someone's arms. The hardest thing to feel is that your moment of death is near. The war was a black ghost that covered Gaza's day and night. It imposed its hell on the people, on the earth and the sky and the air that we breathe. After the war, I had a breakdown. A big wild wave overtook my soul and I was thinking I would never come out from under it. But it was like a hand was extended to me through the theatre, a rubber ring that pulled me out from under the wave. Today, I feel a comfort that I haven't felt in a long time, and I hope that I will always stay like this.
Amjad Abu Yassin. A day before the war, Gaza for me was joy and happiness, trips and going to the sea. Life seemed to be happy. I wasn't thinking about anything. I had one dream, that Gaza would develop in arts and sports. I felt that everything was fine except those two things. Yeah, but it turned out that nothing was fine. No art, sports, health, or safety. It's all the same. Gaza stopped being the city of my dreams because my dream is to be an actor. Am I going to be an actor for 20 people in Gaza and wait until the border opens? If it was in my hands, I would try as much as possible to reduce wars, death, and violence. It's a shame for every drop of blood that falls on the ground. I hate the silence and the abnormal tolerance that people have. I wish all of Gaza would just wake up tomorrow and walk the streets screaming enough! When the war started, we were playing football and the atmosphere was strange. The sky was red. Suddenly, we heard the sound of a plane. I'd never heard a sound like that. We were all scared and we lay on the ground, waiting for death. After that, we heard the sound of a loud explosion just meters away from us. We started looking in each other's faces and silently saying our goodbyes. Turned out the bombing wasn't meant for us. It was targeting a car of wanted men on the road above us. But we kept lying down, waiting for the second rocket, and all I could think of was my two older brothers who were with me. I was more afraid of them, for them, than for myself, and I think they felt the same way. I carried my sports shorts and ran away from the field. As I ran, I stepped on a piece of shrapnel. I took it out of my leg and went out into the street. And that's when I saw them. There were 3 martyrs. You couldn't make out their features. The first one's legs were on fire. He was looking at me and I was looking at him. And among everyone there, he was warning me about something I didn't understand. And it was then that I knew he was warning me about a car coming fast towards us. Then I knew the real meaning of death. And instead of being 3 martyrs, there could have been 4. I was shocked at the scene. I stood there watching. And when I woke up, after passing out, we ran home. The war came, and we're still living in it. The victims are always the poor people who have nothing to do with anything. Even when there's an earthquake or a flood in any country, it's always the victims that are the poor people, as though there's a universal conspiracy against them. After the war, everyone started lying to everyone else. Lies, cheating, dishonesty, deceitfulness. For positions and interest, the leaders and powerful people commit slaughters and crimes without batting an eyelid or feeling any guilt. Poor people get poorer, and sick people get sicker. I've lost trust in all mottos. The biggest speech from the biggest leader is bullshit. All speeches in the world don't warm up a cold person or someone sleeping in a tent. The crisis is that the whole world is watching us, as though there's nothing going on. And they are still making their speeches.
Anas Abu Atia. Since I was a small kid, I've dreamt of being a famous football player. I believed I would fulfill my dreams, but today there are a million obstacles in my path. Before, there were no playing fields for adults or even kids. Then the siege came and made everything worse. If I was the Prime Minister, I'd pay most attention to the Ministry of Youth and Sports. I would build playing fields everywhere, especially in schools, and I'd let the students play freely, not be kicked out by the school guard. I'd abolish all club fees and preserve all parks. But dreams, security, hope, and the future are all words that lose their meaning in a city that kills the smallest dream possible. I was a goalkeeper, and my friend Mohammed kept telling me, I'm going to get a goal. But I always stopped at his goals. On the 7th of January 2009, a day in the war, I was sitting at the door of our house, and it was foggy. And someone came to tell me, your friend Mohammed was martyred. Of course, I didn't believe it. I went looking for my friend, and I was really scared of the idea of death. I got to the mosque and saw the closest friend in my life, Mohammed, wrapped in the flag of Palestine and torn into pieces. I cried a lot, and I was sad because I couldn't hug or kiss him, and I started holding him. We took him to the cemetery and buried him, and I kept sitting there, telling him I loved him, and I was really upset because he left me alone in this world. As I was leaving the cemetery, there was heavy bombing. I felt that the angel of death was following me and not leaving me alone. But, thank God, I'm alive.
We had Eliana. From when I first became aware of the world, I'd had limited thinking. Life for me was to be born, grow up, get married, have kids, work, raise them, feed them, educate them, marry them off, and then die. But after the war, I harder than that. It turned out that every small step we take has a million knots behind it. I'm scared of not finding work when I grow up, because wherever I go, I see men sitting in front of their houses with nothing to do. It's what scares and saddens me the most. That's why kids in Gaza took responsibility and were denied their childhood since birth. My mother always used to say, "Ihab is the best one of my kids," because I was always at home, never had any problems. When the war started, my father locked us up at home because of how scared he was for us. And 2 hours later, I was bored. I went out to walk around our house. But this time, the walk was different. I was afraid to walk near any cars in case they were bombed. And all the time, I kept looking up at the sky in case a plane would come and bomb me without me knowing. I was terrified. Even though the Taui district didn't see a lot of activity. I went back home, running as though from something terrifying. And I stayed at home until the war was over. After the war, my life changed a lot. My relationship with people and the neighbours improved. I became known to the men of the neighbourhood and started playing checkers with the old people. I started spending all my time outside of the house. Couldn't stay inside for even a minute. But my mother, she stopped saying that Ihab is the best one of my kids. I discovered that I didn't exist before the war. But after the war, here I am, and God protect me. In the city, breathing his air, singing, dancing, and crying with it. Life is rolling on.
Tell me a pleasure.
Done?
Tell me a pleasure. Television. Gaza is a matchbox, and we're the matches inside. When the war started on Gaza, all the media were focused on us. Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, and all the satellite channels were all focused on Gaza. And the occupation wouldn't leave us alone. The whole world became busy with Gaza and what's happening. Suddenly, Al Jazeera wrote, "Breaking news, death of Muhammad al-Hindi." And that wasn't normal, because that Muhammad, he's my uncle, my mother's brother. It was the first time I see the screaming move from live broadcast on TV to the house. Screaming and yelling and tears. All of it mixed together, and it moved from our house to the street. And my mum fainted. A while later, the phone rang. It was my second uncle calling to tell us that Muhammad was martyred. He didn't know that the whole world knew the news. This television is awful. Before a person is shot, as the bullet is on its way to his chest, the television has already broadcast the news. But these days, the channels are sitting either praying to God to send another war on Gaza, so they have work. Anyway, we all started crying bitterly for my uncle, remembering him and talking about him. We kept talking about him for a long time. And it started getting less because death became normal in Gaza. After the war, I stopped caring whether I live or die. After what we saw in the war, I don't care about anything, because I think each day I live is the biggest bonus. And all the life I live after the war is extra, because I could have died at any second. You know, I'm sick of the city, even though I love it. And I'm sick of the people too. Sometimes I feel that I know the 1.5 million who live in Gaza. There's nothing new. The same day is repeated every day. I feel like traveling, like changing scene and faces. As soon as I wake up every morning, I see this electricity pole in my face. I wish I'd wake up one day and not find it there. Each day, Abu Ibrahim stands at the door of the supermarket. And Abid, the bean seller, is selling his beans. And Abu Abid is sitting at the door of his house. And Abu Ibrahim is standing with Hassan. And I know the taxi drivers one by one. I know who takes you to the city and who takes you to the beach. It's soul draining. The only hour that's different in my life is the one when I come to theatre practice. It's become my work and my mission. I wait for it impatiently. Without the theatre, I would have gone crazy. When I grow up, I want to be an actor. I love acting since I was a kid. But any institution that I used to go to when I was a kid threw me out a few days later. But this time, it's different.
Noodles and cans of all shapes and colours. Made in Morocco, China, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Somalia, and the date of expiry doesn't have it. In the war, all of the streets were filled with empty cans. A lot of kids wounded their legs on those empty cans. The occupation was leading a war on earth and the sky, and we had declared a vicious war on food. We used to eat 100 times a day. Whenever we opened our eyes from 6 in the morning till the next day, 6 in the morning, we'd be eating. I thought only our house was like that. But then I asked, and they told me, all of Gaza went crazy for food. I thought the state of the war and the scenes of martyrs and destruction would affect people's appetite for food. But it seems that the state of fear and horror and worry makes people more hungry, and they eat more. It could also be that the whole family was at our place, especially the girls. They competed on who could make the tastier food. And my poor father, he couldn't keep up, carrying bags of food of all shapes and colours. The food that we ate in the 20 days of war was enough for a year. And the problem was that every time that I said I didn't want to eat, I ate more. When I grow up, I want to be a journalist or a lawyer or a prime minister. A journalist so that I could photograph the beauty and simplicity in Gaza because I love it. I love its salt, sand, and air, and I can't imagine living anywhere else. A lawyer so I could defend all of the deprived and mistreated people in this city because I don't like seeing anyone suffer in it. And I wish I could be Prime Minister so I could force law and order on the city because That's where the solution begins.
Relax, girls, don't be scared. This is just the sound of aimless shooting. That's what our teacher said as soon as the bombing started. After a while, her mobile phone rang and she spoke a few words only. 120 martyrs? She smashed her mobile onto the floor and told us, "Go home, all of you." As soon as we went into the yard, we saw our parents. Some of them in pyjamas, some in their undershirts, some barefoot. We were very scared. My two sisters and I kept waiting for Dad, but he was really late, so we decided to go home by ourselves, even though it's a long way. On the way, I saw something for the very first time. A martyr being carried on a coffin wrapped in the flag of Palestine, with banners around him and people crying. But the weird thing is that the funeral barely had 30 people in it. Funerals of martyrs usually have thousands. Then I felt that there was some really big catastrophe going on in the country. I got scared for Dad. I didn't want him to come get us because I was scared he'd be hit by a rocket. I was also scared of dying, and I didn't want to die now because it would be a catastrophe if I died and no one came to my funeral. I started running home and people were running around us like it was doomsday. No one knew where they were going because the sound of rockets didn't stop. Every few seconds a rocket would fall and shake the ground. I felt that the streets were not the same streets, nor were the people the same people. Strange sights, sounds and smells. After the war, a lot of things changed inside me. I started hating going to the bathroom. From the second I go in, I can't wait to come running out, because all the time in the war, I was afraid they'd hit a rocket on our house when I'm in the bathroom. And there, one would be in great focus, and you know the rest. I also started hating the morning line at school. When the war started, I was in the line. That's why today I feel that the minutes in the line are hours of fear and worry. All school for me is one pile and the line is another. I have terrifying dreams. All night I have a conflict within myself between the desire to sleep and fear of nightmares. Sleep became a monster hiding behind my eyelids. I stay like that till the morning. I don't know when I slept and when I woke up. I want to become an actress, and this is a hard dream to fulfill in Gaza, especially for girls. I tell myself it's a shame for the people in Gaza to be deprived of my talent, because I could become an important actress. But if they don't want me, to hell with them. I'll go to any country and act there. Gazans are deprived of everything anyway. It doesn't stop at theatre. Sometimes I think people in Gaza can barely find food. How are they going to go to the theatre? You know, I wish I could live in a civil, democratic society with peace and 20 cinemas, and keep watching movies and flying in my imagination and dreaming.
When I was young, I used to feel that I was the happiest child in the world. But the more I grow and the more my mind grows, the more my worry grows, because I start to understand things that I did not. I start to understand the meaning of a deprived child. The thing that upsets me the most and makes me cry the most are children's tears. All children in the world, regardless of religion or colour or nationality. When I grow up, I want to be a paediatrician, and that's the hope that gives me a big push in life. even though I'm fed up and sad and bored because Gaza doesn't have any life in it anymore. Yesterday, I was sitting in school and I heard the sound of planes. I got really scared and I wanted to run away from school. I felt like I was going to die because I remembered the war. The scenes from the war won't leave my mind. On the third day of the war, my family was sitting together talking about what was happening in the war, and my grandmother was reassuring us so that we wouldn't be scared. We were actually calmed, even though the sound of the rockets didn't stop, but my grandmother's warm voice was calming us. The phone rang. The lines never caught during the war, so when we heard the phone, we were really happy. Hello? Yes? This is the Israeli Defence Army. You have 5 minutes to clear the house. It's for your own benefit. We have warned you. I couldn't stand on my legs anymore. Everyone in the house started yelling. My grandmother was the first to run away. It was the first time I'd seen her going so fast. My dad held me and my sisters and told us not to be scared. He was pulling me to leave and I was going to die if I didn't take my teddy bear with me. I felt that I'd betray him if I left him under the bombing. I escaped Dad's hands, ran to my bear, took him in my arms and left. We all got far away from the house and sat down to wait for the 5 minutes. They were the longest 5 minutes in history. They became 10. We felt like years had passed. I was in a whirlwind. Thoughts and dreams were thrashing about in my mind and the world was spinning. I felt that the dream of being a doctor was very, very far away. I held the bear and remembered myself when I was small, how I was always laughing. I want to go back to being small and stay small. I don't want to grow up. But the only thing that comforted me was the love of people who didn't leave us for one moment. Gaza is full of love.
I was 9 years old when we returned from the Emirates. It was the first time I visited Gaza. The car was moving along the street and I was looking out from the window. I didn't like anything in the city. When we stood at a traffic light, a lot of kids came to the car begging, selling gum and biscuits. Then I hated myself and wanted to go back to Emirates. Since then, I have lived in Gaza and will not leave it even if they give me a choice between it and Paris. Because I discovered that the love indeed is enough for the whole world, and that places are in their people, not in their buildings or views. Mum always talked to me about Gaza when we were in the Emirates. I liked it before I saw it, but once I lived in it, I liked it more. It has details that Mum didn't see. It's such a pity. All it needs is safety to be the most beautiful city in the world. In the war, the Takutai Mosque and the Noor Mosque were bombed, and after that the house of Abu al-Qadis, and the Abu al-Qadis house is our topic. They are our neighbours, and the Israeli secret services threatened them with bombing. People told us to live on the bottom floor, it's safer. So when they bomb the Abu al-Qadis house, it won't hit us. We went down to the first floor and waited for the army to bomb Abu al-Qadis house, but they bombed the Noor Mosque instead. All its windows, doors and stones flew on us while we were in the apartment. I was very injured. All the doors fell on my head. Of course there was screaming and the house was in a total mess. The next day we had a family meeting and decided to go back to the upper flat And we did. We moved to the top floor, but this time they hit the Takwa Mosque. All the glass and stones flew on us on the top floor. So we decided to go down to the bottom floor, because it's safer. And we sat and waited for the army to bomb the Abu al-Qadi's house, and that night, and we did. They threw the first rocket, then the second, but it didn't explode. And if they threw another rocket and hit the one which didn't explode, the whole neighborhood would have been wiped out. And people would have said, here was Abu al-Qadi's neighborhood.
سامي الجزاوي. The hour that I hate the most in the day is 12 noon. Every time the exams start, I feel that the war will start again. Yes, it does. I can't answer any of the exam's questions. None of them. And thoughts keep floating around in my head. I'm sick of them. I ask myself, is that normal? Is what is happening to me normal? Or am I sick? People say the Sea of Gaza washes all pains. But my pain is bigger than the sea. همي أكبر من البحر. Because the last time I was at the sea, I was with my friend. We were swimming, we were playing, and we had fun. But now, I cannot go to the sea, and I cannot see my friend. The Taratini Street is near the petrol station. And gas is very expensive, especially in those times. So it was a big deal to buy a liter of gas. So my dad sent me to buy petrol. روح جيب gas يابا, روح جيب gas. After I bought it, I was waiting and I was waiting and I thought, Maybe I can. Maybe I can see Zaki. Zaki is my friend. He lives close to the petrol station. So I got to his house. And while I was in a hurry, because my dad wanted me to return quickly with the petrol. So I went inside and in their house without knocking the door. Yes, without knocking any door. He's my friend, he's my brother, his mom is my mom. So I saw him, I hugged him, I kissed them both. And I said hello to you, hello to your mom, and I just quickly left. As I'm leaving, 20 meters between me and his house, I heard the loud sound of a plane, and after that, the sound of a rocket failing on my friend's house. Unbelievable. I've never seen something like that. People started screaming that the house was bombed. I couldn't believe it. I looked back at my friend's house and there was nothing. Smoke coming out of it. I have never seen anything like that.
صوت الموت صادم على مسمع طفل غزة.
I went back, returning to our house, and when I got there, my dad told me, "Your friend Zaki died." No, he didn't. Everyone started telling me, "Your friend Zaki died." I didn't believe it. That is why I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't go to the hospital. And I didn't go to the cemetery. Zaki lam yamut. He didn't die. I always talk to him at night. Not to him, to his photo. I'm very upset with him because he doesn't come visit me anymore. I'm also visiting the non-existent house. So I'm sure he's not dead. And for sure, there will come a day when we meet. What I would say? I love you? No. He's just my brother. I will blame him. I just will tell him. اشتقت لك كثيرا يا أخي. I miss you so much.
What I love most in Gaza is people's kindness and simplicity. And what I hate most is the political party fanaticism. Sometimes I feel that there's a contradiction between all of this love and kindness that people have and this evil that controls the surface. If it was in my hands, I'd solve the problem of the Palestinian division tomorrow. In the war, they assassinated a big Hamas leader. All the media in the world covered the incident, but the whole world was in one valley and we were in the other. Because Modi and Saloma, my young brothers and dad, had gone to a land that's next to the Hamas leader, we called them 1,000 times, and as usual the mobile lines wouldn't go through, which stressed us out even more. Mum started pacing the balcony like a small bird for whom they'd taken her children. She imagined that the balcony would somehow rescue Modi and Saloma, my young brothers. I was really stressed. I started crying and I went down to my aunt. My aunt started soothing me. She lied to me and told me that she'd called them and spoken to them. I knew that she had not talked to them, but she was holding me and crying, and I was crying too. When I went to our house, I saw that Mum was still pacing the balcony. I forgot to tell you that Modi and Saloma are 5 and 7 years old. They used to sleep in my arms, and my soul was connected to them. I felt at that time my soul was going to escape and I would die. And honestly, only then I felt that there was a war on Gaza, because I was busy with the computer all the time, and that day was the first time I lived the war. An hour later, there was a knocking on the door of our house, and Dad came back with Modi and Saloma. As much as I loved them, this was the first time I felt how really dear to me they were, how much I couldn't bear to be parted from them. I put them on my lap and I kissed them like it was the first time I had held them. And Mum stopped pacing the balcony, and it was the first time I felt that she loved Dad like that. After the war, I started thinking, why are we like that? Out of the whole world. They took our land and threw us out of our homes. And because we're defending ourselves, all this happens to us. There's no water, no electricity, no phones, no petrol. What are we to the world? Aren't we human?
Every day, Gaza changes. That's why my dreams always change. And each time I make a step forward, I go 100 back. In the first hit of the war, I was going home from school and didn't know the road. Suddenly, a man stood in front of me and asked me, "Where's your house?" I told him, and he took me home. I went down to the house quickly and asked my dad, "Why did you come to get me?" My mum said, "It's normal, dear. Go study." I told her there are no exams, the war started. In the afternoon, they hit the government building near us. My mum said, "It's normal. We're used to what is happening to us." We went running to the neighbours, each one looking out for himself. After minutes, the neighbours' relatives started coming and the house became packed with more than 100 people in it. But still, things stayed normal for my mother. In the morning, Dad went to buy bread and stood in line for 6 hours, coming home with 1 pack of bread. Each of us got half a loaf. And still, my mum said normal. In the evening, my parents decided to go to the hospital and visit the injured, and I went with them. In the hospital, we saw many corpses. They were 4 on each bed, under and on top of each other. Only then, my mother said, "This is not normal." The war isn't over. The war is big, and my fear is to grow up with it. I'm always scared of a new war. If a balloon bursts, I'm scared. If a car hits a strong brake, I jump 20 metres. And if a small kid yells, I start yelling with him. I stay up all night, waiting for a new dawn. But each morning that comes does not differ from the one that passed.
Ali Al-Hassan. The thing I love most in Gaza is that it's not like the other countries. Other countries have lots of problems: famine, siege, division, occupation, bombing, destruction, and death. But we have none of those issues. That's why I love Gaza a lot. Especially that the sewage and the streets are clean and people love one another. Prices are cheap. Everyone is happy and the fish are healthy and do not swim in sewage. And that I definitely will not die of hunger, poverty, or a heart attack that half my relatives have died from. Because of so much happiness. I want to tell you a big secret that I'm holding in my chest and hesitating to say since I started speaking. The secret is, I, my dear folks, am the reason for the war on Gaza. You might not be surprised as to why, because I never had a dream that didn't come true. One night before the war, I dreamed that the war started and our house was bombed and I was the only survivor. The next day at 11:25, the airstrikes began on Gaza. The first shock I got in the war was when the strongest teacher in the school, the math teacher, hid under his desk. In fear from the first second, I thought, if the strongest teacher hides under the desk, what do we do? A lot of kids peed themselves. I started screaming and everyone started screaming with me. I was screaming for a house that I was sure was destroyed and for my family that I was sure was martyred. I went out running in the street wanting to rush home to my family, but I waited for 2 hours for a car to take me, and in the end, I went home walking. All the way I was imagining our house destroyed and my family dead. I got home and found nothing was the matter, and my family were taking down the windows so they wouldn't break from the air pressure. But till today, I'm scared they will bomb our house. That's why, and you can ask my mum, I sleep with 3 mattresses under me. So that when there's bombing, the mattresses will absorb the hits and nothing will happen to me. I hate dreaming, but dreams are not in our control. I think that Ali, that's me, before the war is different from Ali after the war, who was a new person that I'm trying to discover. Before the war, I didn't understand anything about politics. I didn't know the head of state from the Prime Minister. I never listened to news, but today I became a political analyst. Al Jazeera this morning, midday this evening, harvest of the day, harvest of the week. I started following all these programs and discussing them. I started feeling that politics and news are very important in our life because they are what kills us and what gives us life. And also because I want to be the first to know if there's going to be another war.
When I talk to Palestinian kids in Europe, I feel sorry for them, and I don't wish to be like them, because they're in diaspora. They plant their dreams in a land that's not theirs.
Dreams grow with the people and the country. I love life, love to play, and love people. I wish I could be the president of Palestine for one day, so I could enrich love and peace between people, end the hatred and spite in their hearts, and end the internal division. This would be my first presidential decision, but unfortunately, I'm not the president, and that's why there's a war. The war opened with bombing like rain. We came running out of school in fear and found the whole world running in the streets. People were looking for their sons and sisters and mothers. Everyone was running with their heads raised to the sky. Honestly, they looked strange. I saw one of them from a distance wearing pajamas, barefoot, running. When I saw her, I didn't recognize her. But when I got close to her, wow, that's my uncle's wife. The chic one, the one who doesn't leave the house without looking top-notch. That's when I was sure the war had started. It's been more than a year since we've been talking about war, and we've lived it and continue to live it every day in detail, because the TV, the phone, the doorbell are all things that remind me of the war, and I don't like them. You know, I even threw away my mobile, and I'm most scared of being alone. I think, what would I do if a war starts and I'm alone? Who will protect me? And when I'm with my family, I start to think about how I could protect them. I had a big dream to become an actress, but this dream started shrinking slowly, because people in my country don't look at an actress in a positive way. Even though acting is important and allows me to relay the picture of the suffering of my country and society to the world, I have a second dream if the first doesn't work out, to be a journalist. And the third dream is to make a family that I love and who love me. The fourth is for us to be free and for the flag of Palestine to fly freely. And the fifth is to see people happy, without death, destruction, deprivation, or war. And the sixth, and last one for me, is to finish this monologue and come down from the stage.
Fatima Atala. Gaza's fish ran away, but people were not able to. They opened the sewage into the sea, and if the sea could talk, it would tell them, shame on you for what you are doing to Gaza and me. Instead of music and acting schools, Gaza became a school for shooting and murder. I'm very scared by nature. I'm scared of cockroaches and birds, and I worry day and night. The first day of the war, all the girls went home except me. I was the last one to leave school. I was sitting there shaking. I couldn't stand on my legs. Finally, I felt that if I don't help myself, no one would. I gathered my courage and stood up, shaking, and walked like a tree in the wind, all of me trembling. People were walking near me, but no one felt me. The sounds of rockets got louder, and the horror in my heart grew deeper. Usually the distance from school to my house is half an hour, but that day I got home in 15 minutes because of my fear. It was the time I was the most scared in my life. Every second I thought I would die. It was the first time I feel this terrible loneliness, even though the streets were full of people. I got home and stood at the window. A rocket fell near our house and I flew off the ground and landed on my back. For the whole war, I couldn't stand at the windows. I started sleeping in an inner room that doesn't have a single window. I think I'm still scared today, but I pretend not to be.
Gaza, the warm arms and the fire of hell, horror, fear, death and destruction. But this time our area was safe. Every time the occupation attacks, they hit us first, But it looks like this time they got bored of our area and wanted to make some change. So we got lucky. I used to spend the whole day sitting on a chair watching people running away from their houses towards the borders, carrying their belongings, sons and daughters, and going west. Some of them were carrying their kids on their shoulders, their mothers on their backs. Where they were going, you don't know till all of Gaza got squeezed into one area. Then the distance became tighter and they started running away from the mosque. And it got tighter and tighter till they got to our house. I said to my father, "What? Is it our turn now? But where are we going to?" My dad insisted that we stay at home and said, "A person who leaves his house loses his dignity." I said to myself, "Kid, stay put. You're not better than others. And whatever happens, happens." All day I would busy myself with food, and sometimes would go fill water with my cousins from the pipes in the street. It was about 1,000 metres away from the house. We used to take the donkey cart of Swarbrick. Him and his brother used to come with us to help. All the way he would tell us about his heroic acts and his horse, and how he would go to the wilderness and hunt birds with a slingshot. I never carried a slingshot. It's scary. But the stories were nice, and in those days, entertaining despite our fear. We used to talk so as to lessen our fear from being in the streets. When daytime was over and night came, we would say, "The night has come with its worries." We couldn't even sleep. I used to sleep for 15 minutes and wake up for 3 hours. How can you sleep with the bombing going on? And we're lying in bed waiting for our fates. Sometimes I'd look at the sky from the edge of the window and find the world so red with fire and smoke everywhere. And I'd ask myself, why is the whole world at rest and we're living in an inferno?
My grandmother and I, we were at home alone. And she was telling me stories. Old days of our country. Funny stories. And there were sad stories too. But you know, she never told me a complete story because she always had to go to the bathroom. My grandma spent half her time in the room and the other half in the bathroom. Anyway, my parents came home at 10:30 and they went to sleep straight away. I couldn't sleep. I was lying on my bed awake, you know, writing, doing my homework. And suddenly I heard this distant explosion, the noise of a distant explosion. So I went to my parents' room and I took the radio to hear the news. And then I woke my father up and I told him, I said, "I heard the sound of a strong explosion." And he said, "Be quiet, go to bed. It's just aimless shooting." Anyway, I went back to bed and then the electricity was out. And then suddenly there was this huge explosion. It shook my world. I pulled my blanket over me and covered myself, covered my face, and then something fell on me. And I raised the blanket off me with all my strength, and it was the frame of the window. That's what had fallen on me. The blanket was full of glass and the entire house was full of smoke. It was the day they hit the workers' union, the building next door to it. But actually, that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is the stupid things that happen, which I can't find an explanation for. Like, first, the world was on fire, and we all felt we would die, right? But my grandmother was looking for her false teeth. She was afraid that when she died, people would find out she had no teeth, you know, like they didn't know already. Second, the house was full of smoke, but my father lit a cigarette. Like we needed more smoke. Third, my uncle called to make sure we were okay, and my father told him, he said, we're all fine, thank God, but all the windows in the house were broken except for one, and my uncle said, go and break that one. And my father did it. And I don't know why I'm telling you this story. All I know is that we're living in a cage. It's a prison, like an encaged bird who wants to come out but is besieged. And kids are dying in front of their mother's eyes, hearts are crying for them, screaming in the loudest voice, but no one hears. No one's heart softened, and no one seems to care.
So many people. Mahmoud Abu Sha'aban. Okay. You're going to think I'm crazy, nuts, cuckoo. Go ahead. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. In truth, what's happening with me is not normal. I mean, losing trust in my friends is normal. Lots of people have lost trust in others. What's driving me crazy is that I've lost my trust in, like, shop windows and cars and police stations and suspicious areas. In my personal philosophy, all of Gaza is a suspicious area. To make a long story short, everything that was hid in the war, I'm scared of going near today. I don't even know how to walk down the street. I'll be walking on the right and get scared, and then I'll move to the left and I'll be scared, so I'll go back to the right. And I'll just stay in this whirlwind. Where am I supposed to walk? In the middle of the street? On the first day of the war, I was in my brother's shop. He sells like computers and mobile stuff, you know, accessories. And a medal fell on the floor, and my brother told me to hang it up. Suddenly, while hanging it up, I heard the sound of rockets, and the glass fell on me and injured me. You know, I was scared. I wasn't scared for myself, but for my brother, because he was so injured. He was worried about our family. Go up to the house and make sure they're okay. I went up the stairs. I wasn't scared. I made sure they were all right. And they were all fine. Thank God. After that, I walked up the street to find out where the explosion happened. There were so many explosions. Gaza had become like a black night, full of smoke. But I still wasn't scared. Oh, I forgot to tell you that my brother had a cup of tea in the first explosion, and it fell from his hand and broke. Do you think it was because of fear?
but I can't. I can't not see the poverty, siege and famine, especially when all Gaza City flooded into Arahi and emptied it of all goods in 2 hours. I can't not see the deprivation in every house, the fear and the sickness. What do you want me to say about Gaza? From when I became aware of it, I was sad about everything inside it, especially the kids and even the adults, youth, women, girls, animals, stones and trees. Everything in it is crying. I'm looking for nice words to say, and I can't find them. The sea is the only thing that helps me dream. When I stand on the shore, I can imagine Cyprus, travel to Paris, fly to Rome, all while standing in the same spot. I go around the whole world, and in the end I land on my bed in our house in the middle of the refugee camp. I go back to the reality of Gaza, the dirty market, overflowing sewage, the carts, and what's on top of the carts, the suffocating smell, and the silent people who can't speak. When I look at the clock and it's 11:55, I start shaking and my heart beats faster, and I feel that the war started again. Not only the clock scares me, everything that flies does, even the flies. I can't tell anyone about my fear so that they don't call me a wimp or a sissy. I'm most scared for my older brothers. When a fly lands on any of them, I feel it's going to kill them. I start shouting and I run away from the place. That's why I'm now escaping outside the house all the time, because of the many flies.
Before the war, I was a child. But after the war, I discovered I'm not a child anymore. And that Gaza, unlike all cities in the world, doesn't have children in it. When the war started, I was playing in the neighbourhood and I found all the neighbours running away. I asked, what's going on? And they told me the Israeli army told the neighbours that they would bomb their house. I went running home to tell my parents. And in less than a minute, we ran away from the house. We took nothing. Oh, except a gas cooker, because it's more expensive than gold in Gaza. I felt then that I could never go back to my home. We went to my grandfather's house. The next day, the Israeli intelligence called my grandfather's house and told me they would bomb it. We ran out. I went to my other grandfather, the father of my mother. There were 5 other families there, all my aunts. My cousins and I became good friends. We'd stay up all night and talk about the war. I was tired and scared, and I wanted to go home and sleep on my bed and pillow. 3 days later, they bombed our neighbour's house. After the bombing, all the inhabitants of the neighbourhood returned to their houses, and I went back to my room. But I couldn't sleep anymore. I've been wanting to travel for a long time. I have an uncle in Canada who always sends me videotapes of him and his family in Canada's parks, sea, shops, and in the background of the pictures are Canadian girls. You know, like I need that. It's like he's taunting me. You know, I started dreaming about Canada day and night. That's why I don't like acting. I tell myself, you know, maybe it'll work out for me, and maybe I'll be an actress, and I'll travel to Canada, and I'll be a Canadian, and I'll marry a Canadian, and have Canadian little children. What language do they speak in Canada? In mine. I'll learn Canadian anyway, and I don't care, because they won't know that I am an Arab in Canada, because I have such blonde hair and blue eyes.
childhood apana. If you want to call me a coward, do so. Because after the war, I don't answer to any kid who swears at me or who hits me. I'm just sad. I leave him and I walk away. Before the war, I wasn't like that. The flying bird would avoid me. Why did this happen to me? Because honestly, after I saw so many kids dying in the war, I started to feel that all of us are going to die. It's just a bit delayed. I said to myself, kid, you're a lot bigger than that. I started to feel that I was 100 years old. The war ended on the ground, but it's still there in my head. I want to be like any child in this world. Not in the world, at least in Jerusalem. When I chat to my cousins who are living in Jerusalem on the net, I feel that they are living their childhood and they don't think like me at all. I'm scared to tell them what I'm thinking, so they don't think I'm weird. I pretend to be listening to them and I lie to them. They didn't live what we lived in the war. My family and that of my uncle and my grandfather all went to live at my uncle and aunt's place because it was far away from the war and it was a safe area, or so we thought. The next day there was a bombing on the street next to my uncle's house and the wall behind the house collapsed. The third day, my uncle, at whose house we were staying, went to buy ful and falafel for breakfast. When he returned, he parked the car at the door of his house, and before he went down from the car, a rocket fell on him. The upper half of his body fell on the asphalt, and when the ambulance came, they took out the lower half from the car. The paramedics went and collected the upper half in a plastic bag and they took it to the hospital. Everyone started wailing and screaming and my mother started asking God to bring him back safe. I don't know. Was she lying to herself? Or to us? Of course my uncle didn't come back. And he won't come back safe.
Makman Najim. For the first time, the streets of Gaza were clean. There wasn't a paper or a cardboard. People were collecting the paper from the streets to use it for baking because the electricity was disconnected. My mum didn't want to bake and she asked me to bring bread from the oven. The queue at the oven stretched from Gaza to the West Bank. People would line up for 8 hours to get their turn and take half a pack of bread. In seconds, a Palestinian rocket launcher was erected in the area. In less than 1 second, the Israeli planes started bombing it. People began running in all directions and the ambulance came. People started falling dead, others were injured. I was in shock and people in the streets started telling me, thank God you're safe. Anyway, I went back home without the loaf of bread and my mum yelled at me, but till today she doesn't know why I didn't bring the bread back.
When I was 5 years old, we went to Tiberias one day. It was a very beautiful city, like a paradise. As we were going home on the bus, someone called the driver and told him not to take the Jerusalem road because Sharon had entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Only then, I realised that Tiberias is not ours. I'm in the Remol school near the Ministry of Passports, which was first hit by the war. All the ministry flew into the school. All the girls started crying, except me. I was laughing. Until today, I don't know why I was laughing. When I went home and turned the TV on, I saw all the buildings around our school destroyed, with corpses lying next to each other. I saw our school, But I didn't see myself on TV, and I thanked God. I hope there won't come a day when I'm on TV, because we don't get anything from it except death. After the war, I started knowing what people are thinking even before they speak, and feeling from the look in their eyes what they want. I also started knowing things that I or someone of my age should not know. I became braver and started knowing how to speak properly. And my trust in people grew. Turns out the war had benefits. Would anyone believe that? After the war, I'm stronger and going to the future with more confident steps.
We Ahmed Bailey, born in 1997, is Southern. What I love most in Gaza is Barcelona Park. I used to go there 3 times a week. I would spend the whole day on the swings, laughing and playing with my friends. But during the war, the occupation bulldozed it and destroyed it. I went to visit the place and started crying. I remembered where I used to play and where the swings were and my laughter with my friends. I want to be a lawyer, so I can defend the people that have been victimized. And you won't find more of them than an empire of Gaza. Because I feel that Gaza is 100 countries and 1.5 million presidents. The tanks got to our house at 5 in the morning. Mom started gathering things from the house and everything turned upside down in a few seconds. Everyone started yelling and carrying what they could, and we went out running in the streets, not knowing where we were going. My grandmother said, "You can only go to the schools." And oh, the schools, woo, the schools. Our school is more beautiful than all schools. 100 of us used to sleep in one class. From the first night, I got into a fight with another girl. About 1/4 meter. And who was gonna sleep in it? And I don't know how we slept on top of each other, like a mountain of old, discarded, forgotten clothes. 3 days later, we went back to the house and the neighborhood. But a lot of things had changed. The neighborhood was not the same. And the people were not the same either. The biggest change in me is that I became a gossip. Honestly, I can't hold my tongue. Our theater trainer told me that this is normal in Gaza. All Gaza gossips about each other. But the difference between me and the people in Gaza is that they don't admit that they are gossiping, while I admit in my full mental capacities that I am a gossip. I'm a gossip. Sometimes I find no one to gossip about, so I gossip about my son. سلام لمن بقى وسلام لمن ذهب سلام لأمي وأبي سلام لحبيب هجرني ولم يعد سلام لسادة كسب السلام. Wiam Deiri was found dead under mysterious circumstances in Ramallah in 2020.
Our future in Gaza is obscure and unknown, like a calm volcano that can erupt at any second, as if we're on a boat without a captain in the midst of a raging sea. We go right and left, and no one knows where to lead. I hear that in other countries, childhood is sacred, and children live their lives without problems and fear. But Gaza's children are forgotten and outside the picture. They're the ones who feel the injustice the most. Because society treats them like they're not kids. When it wants, it makes them adults, and when it wants, it returns them to being children. And most people deal with them like they're only bodies, not minds. When I see a child peddling in the street, or working in a shop, I imagine how the children of the world are playing, resting, and feeling safe. Honestly, my heart breaks for them, and sometimes I cry. Gaza has no tenderness and no childhood. A boy is born a man here, and a girl is born a bride. Dad before the war was a lot more tender with me. I wish he would take me in his arms like before, but God help him. He's probably worried too, because in the war, we lost 5 terms of land in a second. The field that's 60 years old was hit by a rocket from the Israeli army, which burned all the oranges in it. My father, my brother, and myself could have also died that day, because we were close to the window. If Dad hadn't thrown me on the ground, all the shrapnel would have hit me. After the war, I visited the Rafah crossing and saw the flags of Palestine and Egypt next to each other, yet separated by a wire. I felt the difference between the 2 flags, and that this wire is the border of this big prison that we live in. I felt how stupid and unjust is the world. I felt like breaking all borders and ending all differences between races and religions so that everyone in the world would be brothers. My dream became to live in a safe country, even in a small village, in a distant island at the end of the world.
Yasmin Abuela. I want to be a specialist in the science of metaphysics. You know why? Because I think that Gaza itself is behind nature. And I got so much from my presence here in Gaza, I'd like to transfer my skills to others. The Shujaya camp is always the center of events. Each time the occupation wants to invade Gaza, they pass by our house. When the war began, people left their houses thinking the Shujaya would be hit. It's normal in this case to leave our house. Everyone was calling my dad to convince him to leave the house. My brothers from Algeria, my uncles from the States, my uncles from Ankara. The whole world was begging my dad, but he wouldn't budge, refusing to leave the Shujai. 3 days with my mum, having packed the house stuff, and we're suspended in travel mode. We want to go to my sister's house because it's safer there. After we were exhausted from talking, he agreed and said, "You go and I'll follow." How are we going to leave him? My mum was smart. She left the bread at home, and you know how dear bread was in the war. As soon as we got to my sister's house, she called him and said, "Salman, no, we forgot the bread. Bring it for us." Salman fell into the trap and brought the bread, and we wouldn't let him leave. The next morning we woke up to a phosphorus bomb that fumed the streets. We all started crying, our tears falling because of the phosphorus. The bomb was easier on us than our dad's taunting. He said, "I told you, let's stay at home. It's better for us. There's no place like home." And on it went. What added fuel to the fire was that the mosque next to my sister's house was destroyed in the bombing. And you can imagine what my dad did to us. He wanted to take us back home immediately. No sooner had he said his final words than we were told the house next to ours in the Shujaya was bombed and the front of our house was ripped off. Then, for the first time, we all looked at Dad. We stayed at my sister's place. It became clear to us that wherever we were in Gaza, in the war, we were not safe. After the war, I started to always dress in a very clean and tidy way, so that if I die, I would die a nice death. But it would become the biggest problem if I was hit by a rocket, because I'd become 100 pieces, and I'd like to die in one piece. Well, Gaza and Gaza's dreams. A dream has become to die a good death, not live a good life.
Justine, Qatar. When the war started, my mum, my brothers and sisters and I were in Russia, which made me always worried about Dad. We wanted to leave Russia and return to Gaza, among our family, to live the events with them. As soon as the war ended and the crossings opened, we returned to Gaza, and from then until today, we've been hearing stories about the war. I couldn't sleep in Russia because of my worry about Dad. Before the war, when the mobile used to ring and it would be for Gaza, we'd be happy and race to answer it. But in the war, every time the mobile rang for Gaza, any number, whether we knew it or not, we'd say, "Dear God," and start looking at each other to see who will answer. After the war, a lot of things changed in me. I started seeing things differently. I began to like the city. Life had become more beautiful, so did I. My friends changed, and I made older and more mature ones. I became very outspoken and brave, even in front of Dad, and I could face anyone. Mum and I became friends. A lot of times we'd stay up at night and talk about everything. In the future, if I grow up, and in Gaza it's an achievement to grow up, because death is standing at your doorstep. I want to be a children's caretaker and defend their rights, because I feel the children of Palestine are born as old people. A kid can be 6 years old and yet supporting a family.